I said it at that time when I wrote my book. If I could know that my daughters were the last sacrifice in the way to peace, then I will accept that. That's why I will never accept it, because they were not the last. There are numbers. And that's what is happening around the world. I see in my daughters every innocent child, mother, or human being who is suffering. I know the meaning of suffering. On that day, 16th, as these days, people are closer to death than to life, living in uncertainty, imagining who will be killed from my living children. Bisan, Mayar, Aya, no, I don't want anyone. I can't differentiate between my children. And my children are my life. Children are the beauty of life. Children are the future. They are the hope. It's not about the biology, about the humanity. On that day, I didn't believe it. Just seconds after I left my daughter's room, the first shell came. I didn't believe it. When I saw the smoke, the dust, I realized it's my daughters. It's my home. I started to ask why I was saved. If I stayed a few seconds, I will be gone with them. I went inside. Where is Bisan? Where is Mayar? Where is Aya? Where is Noor? Where is Shada? They were inside their room. I can't recognize them. They were drowning in their blood. Their brains spread everywhere. Mayar was decapitated. I don't want anyone on earth to see or experience what I experienced. But I started to ask myself why I was saved. If I stayed a few seconds, I will be gone. And we will be added to the numbers. And why at that time? And that's what we need. I believe in every bad thing there is something good. Said my daughters were selected and my house was bombarded for a reason. And that's why it was broadcasted live when I called my Israeli journalist, where I was supposed to be interviewed live at that time about the impact of war on women and women's health. So I called them, and that's what we need in this world, which is missing: the human courage, the moral courage. When my Israeli friend opened the speaker to spread it live to the world, this is the Palestinian doctor who delivers babies. And I delivered babies in Israel, Muslims, Jewish, Christians, without any discrimination, thousands of babies that I am proud of. And that's what helped to spread it around the world. And the second day, it was announced unilateral ceasefire. And that's what satisfied me. It symbolized the war and ended the atrocities and the murder. And since then, I swore to God, I swore to my daughters, I will never rest. I will never relax. I will never give up until I meet them, because I believe I will meet them one day with the big message for them that their holy souls and noble blood for them and the innocent people will never be waste. And that's because the killing, the murder, doesn't hurt the dead or the killed. It hurts the living. And it's the responsibility of the living and loving to take responsibility and to be the voice of the voiceless. If the killed, if the murdered, if those who are experiencing violence can't speak out, It's our responsibility to be their voice, not to be silent, not to be indifferent, biased, or complicit about what is happening in our world. That's what I am trying in this world, to keep them alive in your hearts, in your memory, in your actions. And that's what we need to zoom in, to put an end to what is happening in our world, to look around, to ask, to learn. What kind of world do we want to live in these days? It's not the world we want. Fear, racism, discrimination, hatred, superiority, different challenges, enough challenges. And that's what we need, action. And to come together to make a huge difference and to inherit a good legacy to the coming generations.
When I first read the book several years ago, it was a very, very difficult book to read because of his personal story. When I reread the book a couple of weeks ago, it was an even more difficult book to read because it was this thought that he had that the death of his daughters would be worthwhile if it brought an end. But it didn't bring an end. You see the same events that happened in 2009 happening right before our eyes. And that makes it an almost impossible book to read, almost like we are doomed to continue on this cycle of retribution and hatred and division and so on. But I want to go some steps back, Izzeldin. I want to go back to your childhood, to your growing up in a refugee camp. And I want you to describe to us words which are, I think, missing from the vocabulary of what happened from 1948 onwards in the homeland of your ancestors, which are two words. One is deprivation, and the other is humiliation. These are both emotions which ran through the current of your life from your reading. What was it? In fact, maybe with your permission, I'll just read a very short passage from the book about growing up in Gaza under the occupation. This is my Gaza. Israeli gunships on the horizon, helicopters overhead, the airless smugglers' tunnels into Egypt, UN relief trucks on the roadways, smashed buildings, and corroding infrastructure. There is never enough. Not enough cooking oil, not enough fresh food. This is not now. This is not 2023, 2024. This is 2008, 2009. Take us back to 1948 to 1958, when you were growing up. What was the Palestine that you experienced?
That's the problem. I want to ask any of you, have you seen a Palestinian? Have you met with Palestinians? Are we different than you? We are equal. And we are people like others, with hopes, with the plans. We as Palestinians, we value education, we value life, we want to live and to give life to others. We don't want to delete anyone. And our suffering is man-made. It's man-made, and that's what gives me the hope. It's man-made. What can we do to unmade it? So my life as a child, I see it these days. My brothers, my nieces, my nephews, my cousins in Gaza Strip now. Gaza Strip now. It's mass destruction, mass murder, mass forced displacement, childless, homeless, foodless, waterless, healthless, parentless, futureless. It turned into rubble. 70,000 tons of explosives. If they replace it with food to the people there, you know how much 1 kilogram of onion in Gaza Strip now? It's about 200 shekel, which is about $70. The people under bombardment and they don't have food. They are dependent on the humanitarian aids. So for me, all of this reminds me, I spoke today with my nephew, with my brothers. They are fighting just to survive. Living today, you don't know what will happen after 1 hour to them. So I know the meaning of deprivation, humiliation as a child. That I never tasted my childhood. I never, ever tasted it, even sometimes, because the memory is engraved in my mind. Children, the harm to children will never be erased. It's there, so we have to take care of our children. But in spite of that, I found my way. With the support of my parents who lost everything, but they didn't lose hope in their children. But now, the people there in Gaza Strip, they lost hope in the world. They lost faith in humanity. The world is watching what is happening. As a medical doctor, when I see a woman in labor, bleeding, what do? I don't watch her. I rush to stop the bleeding, to deliver the baby, to save the life. It's illegal, immoral if I continue to watch and not to give hand. I feel guilty if I didn't do my part. And that's what is happening now in Palestine. The world is watching it. Can they stop it or not? They can, but lack of goodwill. Lack of goodwill. And this is destructive to the world. So, I found my way just to be educated. Someone can oppress, can occupy, can deprive, can imprison, can kill, but no one can prevent us from dreaming and achieving the education. And education, I believe, it's the only way to get rid of the misery of life. We can't equalize between the one who is educated and the one who is not. Education is about light and darkness. So that's what I went, and I have to succeed from nothing. And our parents who were not educated, my mother was illiterate, but she was insisting that there is no mercy in life. Life is not merciful. You have to study and to succeed. And she wasn't easy, she was hard because life is hard on her. And being the eldest, you have a responsibility to take care. So every kind, imagine in your life, every kind of dirty black work I have been working. We don't have the holiday. The summer holiday, I have to find any kind of work after school. And if I didn't get the first in the class, I will be punished. So that's the life which now is repeated. We say never again, never again. But in this world, as if we say again and again, it's again and again. And we need to ask, why do we repeat it? It's time to stop it. It's time to give hope to this world. I believe never again, and it's repeated because we need to have order in our world. Lack of accountability, transparency, and responsibility. The world is more discordant these days anymore than any time in this world. And we need to take responsibility because the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is not there. It crossed barriers as hatred crosses barriers. Violence crosses barriers. We live in a small world.
But Izzeldin, love also crosses barriers. And that's something that you're trying to do. But I want to go back to a question which you asked the audience. How many of you have met Palestinians? And I think the implicit issue over there is, what is the voice that Palestinians have? And you were, in a sense, saying Palestinians don't have a voice in this world. And I think this is true. A battle is always a battle of narratives. And I have to say for myself that it was what happened after, we have to say this, right? Because otherwise we won't be accepted. We have to say what happened after the horrific incidents of October 7th, whenever we talk about what happened here. Otherwise, but what about that? So we have to talk about Hamas. It was after all of that happened that I began to read seriously about the Palestinian issue. And I realized that for myself, I speak only for myself, that I was a victim of Israeli propaganda. I only saw one side of what has happened since 1948. I didn't understand what the Nakba was. I didn't understand what displacement was. And in your book, I saw this. This is almost like fiction, right? His family owned land just across the border from where the Gaza wall is, where the Gaza barrier is. They have the papers for that land. They left there because of the fear of violence in 1948. And guess who that land went to? Would you like to tell us?
We are only 10 kilometers from my home, where I live in Gaza now, from our homeland. It has been owned now by Ariel Sharon and his sons. And that's what is going. And even in 1970, we lived in a small house. When we speak a house, a home, it's 4 walls to protect us from the sun and the cold weather, like these days with the tents. And I remember it. I was 14 years old. I came back after I spent 40 days working with an Israeli Jewish family, working in their farms. I earned 400 liras. I'm proud of that. I came back 1 week later. Ariel Sharon, who was the commander of the Gaza Strip, with the army, they came, they want to demolish the houses to widen the streets. Which house? It's a small house, there is nothing, a few mattresses. Even the washrooms are public outside. But we remained, and with the 400 liras, we bought a new house in the camp, and we stayed in the camp. In spite of that, we don't hate anyone. And we don't want to reject or to delete anyone. We want to be added, to recognize our freedom, our dignity, our existence side by side as equal to anyone. And that's the guarantee for a stable, sustainable peace between the people, which is based on equality, on justice, freedom, and dignity, and rights for all. No one will accept or coexist with occupation or with disease, or to be less than the others, less dignified than the others. And that's what we need in this world. To see the person is seen through the other person.
This comes back to this issue of agency and narrative. And I have to say over here that in this great land of freedom, that this desire to deprive people of their voices is extremely strong. Our own experience in programming this was that most venues did not want to have this conversation within their walls. The systematic denial of a voice for Palestinians is part of what we are seeing in the world today. And if you actually persist about this issue.
Not most venues, all venues barring this.
Right.
Refuse to allow us to have a conversation
Right.
around this.
So this question was a very valid question. Have you met Palestinians? Do you know their side of the story? You don't, because that voice is systematically denied. And when that voice is raised by other people, then it devolves around two issues. One is, you are anti-Semitic. And the other is, but you voted in Hamas. And therefore you, meaning all 1.5 million people living in Gaza, are responsible for what has happened subsequently. So I want you to talk a little bit about how you would react to that. But you are responsible for Hamas, and therefore your children must die.
First, I condemn the killing, the suffering of any innocent human being around the world, whether Palestinians, Israeli, Canadian, American, anywhere. No one should suffer because of the actions of political leaders. And no one should take the law by their hand against the international law. This is what I believe and what I advocate for. Concerning the Palestinians, even the narratives, as I said, I see everything, in every bad thing there is something positive. What happened October 7, which I don't accept the killing of any innocent human being, but even I don't accept the revenge and the mass destruction as a result of that. 1,200 were killed, but now more than 41,000 are killed, the majority of whom are children and women. About 30,000 are women and children. 95,000 are severely wounded, disabled, and 10,000 are under the rubble. And the houses, at least 90% of the Palestinians in the Gaza, they experienced 1 or 2 times displaced of their homes. They are, as I said, close to death. It's not the triangle, it's the hexagonal of disease, starvation. We speak about the Pentagon. So it's about thirst, starvation, disease, destruction, homeless, and fear. That's what they live now. But the world, I see the world is dynamic. And as Jesus said, seek the truth, and the truth sets us free. So the truth is coming up. It's not going to be hidden forever. So the Palestinians' voice and the situation there, what is happening, as I said it many times, is destructive, not only to the Palestinians, it's destructive to the Israelis. Exposed the current brutal extremist Israeli government, which is destructive to their own people and also to the international community. And also, I will add to that, it exposed the bias, the indifference, the complicit action of what we call the Western developed democratic countries. Administrations, I am talking about the administrations. The public is in one side and the administrations. They talk about democracy. What kind of democracy they talk about? It's not democracy. It's mediocrity, hypocrisy. And that's why the world is discordant. We need a reform. There is no problem in the international law. The problem in the people who are interpreting it and using and misusing it in a selective, biased way. And we all are suffering as a result of this. I believe the momentum started for the change in our world, because the Palestinian-Israeli issue is not only Palestinian, it became a global international issue. the stability of the Middle East will be reflected around the world. And the world is not free as long as Palestinians are not. And even I say to the Israelis, your safety, your dignity, your security, your future, your peace, your life is linked and dependent on the Palestinian safety, security, freedom, and the future and dignity. So it's time to come together to think as equal, side by side. This is the guarantee for a long, stable, sustainable peace in Palestine, Israel, and in the world.
I watched an interview that you had with Piers Morgan, and there was a reference over there to the 30 years of strife in Ireland and the question of how that was supported, how that was resolved. And a very valuable point was made over there, which is that it started getting resolved when both sides saw each other as human beings. What I'm hearing, obviously from right-wing people in Israel, is that children born in Palestine are not children. They are would-be terrorists. And so what I see from that is this missing of seeing each other as human beings, this demonization of the other. Do you see any signs of hope or change in that?
Of course, hope is life. As long as I am living, there is hope.
Do you see the change?
Of course. I will see hope because as a medical doctor, I will never lose hope as long as the patient is still alive. I lose hope once the patient is dead. The patient, the Palestinian people, the Israeli people, they are still alive. So why the patient is not improving? So we need to ask ourselves, number one, the diagnosis is wrong based on what you mentioned before. The misperception, the propaganda, the bias, the world, and what is happening. So it's time to change the course of the treatment. Once we start to change the course of the treatment in order to secure and to save the life of the patient to reach the shore peacefully, we can. So I believe there is hope. And when you speak about Palestinian children, they are born terrorists. No one is born violent or terrorist. No one, or hateful to anyone. But I can make you violent and hateful. I define hatred. Hatred, no one is born with hate. Hatred is a contagious, destructive disease, and it's the result of exposure. It's a contagious disease. As you mentioned, there are bad things which are contagious, and there are good virtues which are contagious. Love, freedom, justice, sport, health, they are contagious. The same violence, racism, discrimination, they are contagious. So when I do harm to any one of you, as Newton's third law of action, what? Every action has a reaction in the opposite direction. What do you expect from someone that I do harm to them? Are they going to hug me? No, they will react. And it depends upon their characteristics, their education, their life, their ability. So Palestinian children, I can say to you, they are one of the most, and the Palestinian people, based on my research, I did it, one of the most resilient people in this world. Palestinian and women in general, they are the most resilient. Palestinian children, when you ask them now in Gaza Strip, you ask them and you ask your children, what do you want to be in the future? To be a medical doctor or engineer or a pilot? Palestinian children, their answer to you, we are not allowed to grow up, to be killed in our childhood, and then you expect them to talk about terrorism or brutality or hatred. They are killed. 19,000 orphans. 19,000 Palestinian children in Gaza Strip are orphaned. And then you talk about it's shame, it's unjust. the patient who is suffering, if a woman in labor, screaming of labor pain, am I supposed to blame her to say, why do you scream? I should give hand to understand what made her screaming. And that's the Palestinian children, as I said, after Oslo Agreement, we need to change the context in which the Palestinians are living. After Oslo Agreement, we thought it's a new era started. The Palestinian children during the first Intifada were throwing the Israelis with the stones. After the Oslo Agreement, once the Israeli tanks withdrew from Gaza, they threw them with olive branches, with the flowers and candles. These are the Palestinian children. Palestinian children, they want to succeed and to live, but give them the life in order to run a normal life.
Izzeldin, I'm going to ask the audience to ask questions. The issue can be very political. I would request you to ask questions and not grandstand if any of you have that predilection. So in all humility to Izzeldin and to the beauty and hope that he brings into this world, please ask him any questions. The first one is my wife, who...
So when I think of the images we've seen in this last year of, the body bags, the destruction, the land taken over, it reminds me so much of what the Jewish people suffered during the Holocaust. Everything you described is what happened to the Jews over history. And this is what I can't understand, and what even struck me when, after October 7th, both the Palestinian ambassador and the Israeli ambassadors spoke at the UN. You could see the suffering of both people because of this hatred. Yet they talk at each other, they don't talk to each other. What do we need to do to make them talk to each other and to share their anguish with each other and find a solution from that? Because everyone is suffering the same way.
I agree with you. Suffering is suffering for anyone. And as you mentioned, where I am compassionate about the suffering of the Jewish people, what they faced from the history. By whom? By what we call the Western developed, civilized, democratic countries. It's not the Palestinians. We welcome them. We lived in harmony together, even before 48. The people who lived there in the kibbutzim, close to the village of my family, they were in harmony, coexisting, in good relations. Until now, when I worked at the hospital in Israel, I felt one of them. And I went there because I believed in the message of medicine as a human equalizer, stabilizer, socializer, and harmonizer. Can anyone tell me the difference between the cry of the newborn, Palestinian, Israeli, American, or anyone Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist, Hindus, or any? It's a cry of hope. I said, once they are equal and born free, why they don't live free outside? So we need to talk to each other, not to antagonize. So we need the international community, not to be complicit or biased. That's the problem in our world, the main powers of this world. And I will be clear, the decision is in this country. The American administration, they are doing harm to the Israelis, to themselves, and to the world. It's polarized. The public and the administration, they are not fighting. They are not helping the Israelis. As I said, they are doing harm to them. I say the best neighbor for the Israelis will be the Palestinians, once they are living side by side as equal, as a free. This is the guarantee for them, not the Americans here to support them, not with military means. They need to support them with awareness that the future is there between Palestinians and Israelis. So we need the international community to come together, because we as Palestinians, we lost faith in the American administration. So we need the international community to come together to set up the rules based on the international law.
Yeah, right in the back there. Can somebody take a mic to him?
Thank you. I'm curious about what makes it possible for you to continue to write what you do, this book, and tell the stories that you do, understanding the balance between the importance of testimony and telling your story and telling people's stories, but how deeply painful that must be. And it's something I think, has a lot of heft for storytellers in any situation of any means, through writing, through voice. So what keeps you telling this story despite not seeing immediate change, and balance, and weighing that on yourself?
What keeps me, I am accountable. And only accountable. I am a person of faith to God and to my daughters and to the loved ones. I do it all of the time. I am here. I see my daughters. I see my sisters who were killed, my nephews. What did you do for us? I will never keep silent. I have to speak and to talk and to keep them alive. And it's not a story. It's living on daily basis. I live it. I feel it. I miss my daughters. But I see in my daughters in everyone. That's what keeps me, and also what keeps me is the hope, and to inspire the people from what I experience to take action, to make a change in them. Many people, when they hear, they say, you changed my mind. You changed my life. They were drowning in hatred, and they started to see the truth and the light. And that's what we need. Our enemies are our ignorance, our arrogance, and our greed. So we need to show the people who are the Palestinians and what world do we live in order to make it a better world.
Thank you, Izzeldin. Any other questions? Please. Can somebody get a mic to her? Because it's being live streamed. Yeah, okay.
Maybe Erin can ask and then we come back here.
Yeah, Erin, please go ahead. I couldn't see you. You're in the shadows. Yeah.
No worries. First, I just want to say thank you. I guess I have a follow-up question to your question, and it comes also out of the work that's being done by the Freedom Theater in Jenin, which, as you know, was just destroyed again, and by the work of Abdel Fattah Abu-Srour, who says we don't have the luxury of despair. And I want to tie this back to Mohit's conversation about narrative and the power of narrative to change minds. And so I guess I'm wondering, what is your next book, or where will your writing take you? What are the next stories that you will share?
My next story, and that I'm writing my next book. When I left, where I didn't leave because I am Palestinian Canadian now, I live in Canada, but my home is still in Gaza. It's still in Jabalia camp. I missed it. The first thing when I go to Gaza, always, I go to visit the graves of my daughters. Before going to my home, to say to them, I didn't forget you. And to tell them, what do I do in this world? I would love to go to visit their graves. But even the graves are destroyed. But they are here in my mind. And each of you, you have your own country, your own home that you live in. You can go anytime. But for me, Palestine is here. It moves with me everywhere till one day we land in Palestine. So when I went to Canada with 5 living children. And what did they face in 4 months? Because 16th of January, they lost the 3 sisters and 1 niece. But 4 months before, 16th of September 2008, my wife passed away of acute leukemia. So I went as a single father with 5 living children. The youngest is 6 years old. I said to my children from day one, I can't tolerate failure. We have to succeed. It wasn't an easy life. Traumatized the children alone, without any help. But we succeeded. Now, all of my children, my 3 daughters graduated from the School of Engineering, University of Toronto. My youngest son, who was 6 years old, graduated from Schulich School of Business, June 2024. He is now in Europe doing his MBA. My eldest son, Muhammad, graduated from Rotman School of Business to send the message to this world. Nothing is impossible in life. The only impossible thing in life I believe in is to return my daughters back physically to life. So we succeeded, and we will continue to succeed, to make life from death and murder, to spread hope from pain and suffering. And that's what I said. We have to spread hope, freedom, justice through injecting the blood of the murdered souls into a vein of hope, freedom, justice, and dignity in our world. That's what I look for in this world and to write about.
Thank you. Back here, please.
Hi, Dr. Abuelaish. It's an honor to hear you speak.
You need to speak up a bit.
It's an honor to hear you speak. So I'm an Iranian American, and I happen to be Jewish. And after October 7th, I saw a lot of sadness in my community, but I also, unfortunately, saw a lot of hatred. So I decided to read your book, and it really stuck with me, being in the healthcare field, and it really resonated with me. And I was wondering how you would answer the question of how we can take that message that you wrote about and spread it to people who are recovering from hatred and from revenge as well, and have also just gone through something.
You know, the issue of hatred, I never thought of it. I never thought of studying hatred. I am a gynecologist. You know, always I was thinking just to be subspecialized, more to deal with patients. So I was, as a gynecologist, to specialize in infertility, IVF. Then I shifted to fetal medicine and genetics. That's what I was interested in till I did my public health. And then I started, the people after the tragedy, the people were asking me, expecting me, do you hate? The people are expecting me to hate based on the experience and the exposure I faced. And I remember it, my daughter Shada, who was 17 years old at that time, she was severely wounded. And the Christiane Amapour, she interviewed her. She asked her, do you hate? My daughter Shada, at that time, she answered, whom to hate? Whom to hate? So with hatred, now my focus on studying hatred, using what we call it the biopsychosocial approach. So we need to fill the gap in the research. I say to people, if you are a victim of any harm, don't accept to be a victim of hatred. You are gone. You are collapsed. You are broken. You are defeated. Hatred is a poison, which it's toxin, which destroys the human body. It's a fire. But the marsh, the life is continuing. As Einstein said, life is like riding a bicycle. to keep balanced, we must keep moving strongly, more determined, more focused. I know the pain is there. Even the pain, how can you transform it into energy to motivate you? And I say to people, if you faced any challenge and collapse from the first moment, you are gone. Others will pass you. And if, I am sure you watch in your life many things. In football, in soccer, if a team to score a goal the first minute, does this mean this team will win the game? We have 89 minutes. Maybe this goal will trigger energy in the other team to score many goals. Resilience is not to adapt. Resilience is to jump beyond the baseline where you started it. That's why, you know, the arrow. Why do we pull the arrow backwards? We pull the arrow backwards in order to go faster and to go further. So that's life. Life is dynamic, and how to keep moving without giving up and to motivate you to reach the goal. Keep focused to achieve your goal. Don't let others shape your life. Without hatred, without anger. Anger in a positive way is needed. Anger in a positive way, which motivates you to take action. But hatred, build a shield around yourself, not to allow hatred. This gives the perpetrator an opportunity to see you destroyed.
In the events of that day in December 2009, January, sorry, you said you saw only two choices. One was a choice to the path of darkness, and the other was to the path of light. You chose the path of light, and my wish for you and for all of us is that you continue on that path and you continue to spread that path of light. On behalf of all of us at Teamwork, at the center, and all who are open to this message, thank you so much for bringing this forth into the world. Truly an honor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
And now the JLF would like to offer a token of their appreciation.
With me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
No. With me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Please.
All right. We are thrilled that we got to experience the second year of Jaipur Literature Festival here at the Center for Fiction.
Thank you.
It's my honor to close the festival here on their behalf. We want to thank the festival partners and supporters, Asia Society, the National Arts Club, Center for Fiction, Sandram Tagore Gallery, Hawthornden Foundation, the Leela Palaces Hotels and Resorts, VFS Global, Paul John Indian Single Malt Whiskey, Rajbag Food, Bombay Kitchen, Paul John Indian Caffeine Company, TV Asia, and Tanish. Thank you all so much for coming. There is a closing reception at the Sangmore Tagore Gallery, so head on up to that. Also, you can buy books from both of our speakers in the bookstore and get them signed here. Thank you very much for coming. We'll see you again soon.
Is there a pen?